Yeah, so tomorrow I'll be speaking about my book, Skin, A Biography. It's a fourth estate book from HarperCollins here in India. And it really deals about why is it that we all have different skin colors, how did they evolve, are there any differences between different skin types and any particular health problems which arise as a result. It also covers a bit of the genetics which changed as people migrated across the world. So it's really, I call it the biography of skin, but it's a story of why creatures evolved to have skin in the first place. I think in this particular case, my work is in the field of skin cancer. So my original training was actually plastic surgery, but I now specialize in skin cancer reconstructive surgery. So I teach in the university. I'm an academic in the field of skin cancer, and I research skin because we develop some cosmetics and things like that. So I have an interest in researching it. But more fundamentally, I think a lot of our problems in the world are because people actually view skin color as being a massive differentiating factor, whereas scientifically between, say, a white skin or black skin or brown skin, there's really no difference. The reason all the different skin colors came about was because as people migrated between continents, due to exposure of the sun, it was really a battle between folic acid and vitamin D which determined the skin color. So I'm pointing out, in some ways it's a scientific book, but it's also a social book because it really, many people have contacted me internationally after reading it, like top human rights lawyers, others said most of our work is actually because people don't understand this. So I think there's a global message in it, as you'll see if you attend my talk tomorrow. Human beings migrated out of Africa 100,000 years ago. So the first man, as we know it, came out in Africa about 200,000 years ago. So actually, if you look at the bigger scheme of things, it's unbelievable how relatively recent it is, and when you take out the age of the earth. But having said that, the first apes evolved 28 million years ago. So from 28 million years, see, it's fundamentally, as we start moving more, the brain is all about movement from an evolution point of view. So that's why we know things like yoga, tai chi, all those things help because we know that they help brain development. So what it is as the human beings started doing more activity, they developed a larger brain, so they lost the fur to help them cool down. So what it then did was, evolution is all about propagation of species. So to preserve the folic acid which you need to reproduce, the skin became black in Africa. But people started migrating out of Africa only 100,000 years ago. So when they moved into Europe, because there was not enough sun for majority of the time, they started lightening the skin to absorb more vitamin D. And then more recently, say 10,000 years ago, as people started migrating across Indus Valley, our skin again darkened from European skin because we were coming back to the tropics. So for different time frames, so if you talk about African skin, then say 200,000 years ago is modern man, so that skin type's been there for 200,000 years. Look at European skin, it's probably like about 50,000 years, and then you look at our type of skin type is probably within the last 10,000 years. So there will still be some changes, like, because I'm based in Australia and New Zealand, and where we have the highest UV ultraviolet rays in the world because the South Pole, both poles are very high UV, and Antarctica being sheets of ice, it reflects it. So, but what we find is the skin of the same English people who migrated there is thickening and darkening. So what you'll find is it probably takes about 2,000 to 4,000 years. So at that time, the skin there will become brown like our skin. So it doesn't happen in our generations, but there's a clear pattern to it. But under that skin color, we're all the same. Yeah, not because I think the issue is the different skin types. I mean, like I said, it's a big topic to cover in a small interview, but the different skin types, what I mean, genetically we're the same, but each skin type gives us a different physical characteristic because of the skin, as I'll be talking about. So there's a reason why Europeans are taller than us from our skin type, and there's a reason why Africans win Olympic medals by our skin type, and I'll talk about that tomorrow. But the point is that, sadly, in my view, the first thing where people see when they see somebody is their skin color. And that's a universal thing. I mean, in India, I was giving a talk on skin yesterday. Everybody wants to know how they can lighten their skin. And when I'm with my patients overseas, everybody wants how they can avoid sun damage, or how they can tan safely. And then, so I think, unfortunately, because of that, there is still also a lot of misconceptions, and also there's a feeling of superiority or inferiority, whatever there may be. So while, like what you're saying, there are a lot of interracial marriages, no, that isn't the norm. That's still the exception as a global population. In the same way as you look at in India, even still, majority of people tend to marry within their own castes rather than. So what I mean is, yes, as the citizens become more global and there are more Indian people living overseas and more overseas people living here, yes, you're right, probably, but in the scheme of global population, I really think it's the geographical location where people are living which actually will determine the population becoming more homogeneous rather than our sexual selection. Really, the social message it's a scientific, it's a pop science book. So basically, it's a book for people who love a bit of science, who love a bit of anthropology. So it covers anthropology, evolution, genetics, but it also explains, see, skin is the only universal organ. So you have creatures like starfish which have no hearts, you have creatures like sea squirts which have no brains, but they all live and they'll have likes and dislikes and eat and things. And if you look at our sense organs, you can have people who are blind, who are deaf, who have no smell, who have no taste, but you can't not have touch, then you're dead. So so skin is the sense organ of touch. So not only is it our largest organ, but it is our only essential organ. So the book also talks as to why did a creature which have one cell actually develop it in the first place. So it's a bit more about the entire story of skin, from small cell creatures to the story of skin color. Once it enveloped our bodies, how did it change? But the social message that underpins it is more people read it and for them to infer, because when you read it, it will be obvious that, wow, so skin color is really just because there's a battle between two vitamins going on in a body because of exposure to the sun and nothing else. So, and because of it, there were other physical differences which happened, because, for example, like I was saying, virtually all Indian patients are vitamin D deficient. Multitude of reasons, partly dietary because a lot of vegetarian population, but largely also because inherently our skin type, when it's darker, cannot absorb vitamin D. But African skin, because it evolved over a long period of time, over 28 million years from apes, have a lot high levels of pre-vitamin D. So therefore, they actually not only have enough vitamin D, even though they're dark, but it makes them naturally good athletes because of it. So there are a lot of things like that which you can explain from skin. But I think the message is for people to read it, and it isn't a book which says, actually talks about it as a social message, but I think the scientific message there is a given. When you read it, you're left with, most of the people who read it have come back to me and said, our work, we see so much discrimination or this or that all the time, and everybody should read your book. And in fact, I think somebody who reviewed it in India said he called it the book of the century, because he said everybody should read this. So I think, I didn't set out to, I'm passionate about skin and I understand how these changes happen. So it was purely trying to explain the science to a reader in a more accessible way. Yes, that's right. I think even because you can explain it so easily, and it astounds me that how still people actually believe in their own thing, that again, I can explain the reasons for that in some reason in the book. I do cover it in the sense that to a large degree they were the people from Africa went to Europe, like I said, because they were dark, they developed rickets, so the vitamin D deficiency, so the skin started lightening to absorb vitamin D. But conversely, people are very light, they have higher birth defects because they can't, their folic acid gets destroyed. But now in modern times, in Western countries, especially in white skinned people, they supplement folic acid when they think of becoming pregnant. But if you took medical intervention aside in those days, people got rickets, they became infertile, so the dark skin got bred out. But the people who were still dark, but not so dark, could get some remedy, but they're still deficient, so they got more bent and stooped, and so the taller, lighter skinned people felt superior because they were bigger and stronger and taller. But that was really, you can explain it from the skin color not being able to absorb the remedy. So you can actually see how the feelings arose in people, but unfortunately those feelings persisted without actually understanding that, listen, this is just a biochemical issue. It's, it's very easily fixed here.